Death Club.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Dragon's Rioting. So Dragon's Rioting is written and drawn by Tsuyoshi Watanabe. This was published in Dragon Age magazine. We've seen the likes of High School of the Dead, High School DD, Gun Clover, Makenki, the Konosuba manga, etc. This is a monthly magazine, and this series ran from November 2012 and in November 2016 with a whopping total of 48 chapters. A few of those are some special ones from the volumes. So let's get into this, man. This stars our main character, Rintaro, as we see him in the first chapter as a young boy hanging out with his father, who is just a Street Fighter character. He's wearing a gi similar to Ryu's, and he's got a beard and a mustache. So they're hanging out at an amusement park. Rintaro has some ice cream, accidentally stumbles in front of this lady and gets his ice cream cone stuck in her cleavage, and it makes this big old mess. So obviously right off the bat, this is a very ecchi series. And because of this, Rintaro gets aroused, but then he starts feeling chest pains and collapse on the floor. His father takes him to the doctor, and it turns out Rintaro has a very rare disease, commonly known as hentai syndrome. If blood rushes to a certain point in his body, it could prove fatal. With this devastating news, his father realizes Rintaro will never have a normal relationship with the ladies, so he takes it upon himself to at least try to counteract this, as there is no cure as of yet. Takes him to the mountain for 10 years and trains him in the martial art he's a master of, which is Koei Sogetsu. When Rintaro becomes a freshman for high school, he goes back into the outside world, and he enters into Nangokuren High School, and he assumes it's an all-boys school, which means no interaction with the ladies, so he should have a normal, safe life. But as he finds out when he gets there, it is not an all-boys school. In fact, it used to be an all-girls school, just until recently they made it co-ed. So he and two other male classmates he's roommates with are pretty much the only people there, and the rest are women. But not just any women. The reason this school has a manly name is because this is a fighting high school. And everybody fights, pretty much. And there we are met with three of the strongest students, one of each year, of course, and they are known as dragons of this school. And so now Rintaro has to figure out how to live his life here at an all-girls school. And like I said, this series is very heavy into the etchiness. So I actually read this series quite a while ago. This was before the podcast was even a thing. So probably around 2013, 2012. And that was the era of when I would just consume manga. When I first read it, there was only about 20-ish chapters, and then it just got stuck in the translation hell to where we got nothing. And that sucked, so I just never picked it up again. And sometime last year or so, I was like, man, I really feel like reading this, because I do own the first volume physically, and I was organizing my manga, and I saw, I'm like, man, whatever happened to this series? And then I looked, and hey, turns out all the volumes are translated. We can actually finish this series. I was like, oh, heck yeah, I'll put this on the list. And I gotta say, I thought this was a fun manga. It was cool. It reminded me a lot of Kenichi, because Kenichi is the same thing. It's focused on martial arts and the super etchiness that comes about that. It's the same here. I like the characters, strong designs, and it has a fun gimmick, right, which is part of the humor for the series, where Rintaro uses his Koei Sogetsu that he's learned from his father to try to hide everything. So panty shots, cleavage, thighs, and also try to evade from all these women, especially one which is named Ayane, who is also a freshman, who, seeing the strength of Rintaro, decides that she wants him to be his master so she could get stronger to protect her comrades against the other two dragons, Kyoka and Rino. I thought, yeah, this is fun. The action's actually pretty good. I like the art style. And the thing that always came up in my mind was, man, I wonder how this ended. And we got there. And I have to say that, unfortunately, my opinion of this series drastically changed when reading the second half of the series. Yeah, so after a certain point in reading the chapters I haven't read before, you can tell, oh, this series got canceled. That's unfortunate. We've mentioned many times, there's always so many different directions you can take when it comes to finishing a manga that gets canceled, and Watanabe decides, oh, I'm just gonna go balls to the walls ridiculousness with it. To me, that is very unfortunate, because that ruined the manga for me. Watanabe wanted to go full force into the ecchi comedy, borderline gag stuff here, and it just ruins a lot of things. The characters that were built up The writing wasn't anything too deep or serious. It was surface level when it came to the characters that we got, even during the arcs where Rintaro interacts with each individual dragon, and that also adds the element of this being a harem series. Mainly because Rintaro is just so strong and kind-hearted, and he has all this wisdom from his father learning these martial arts, that all these women tend to, fall in love with him. Some minor characters that had like one fight, and then the rest are, of course, the 3 main dragons, and some that graduated the prior year before him going there. Yeah, the writing was never too deep with them, but it was just enough, right? Like, the thing about the series was, it's a fun time, right? You want to see some cool action fights with these ladies. You get the ecchi shots, but you get some cool fights. So there's that balance that Kenichi had. And that's what I was really going for. But then, when we got more into the gag stuff, everything just kind of fell apart. It was just really breaking the tone and the pacing of what we were doing, especially in the final few chapters where we get the final fight between Rintaro and somebody from Ayane's school that she ran away from, who ends up being the main antagonist, as he's part of this darker side of the martial arts world. I was looking forward to that fight because I wanted to see Rintaro do some crazy things, because he sort of gets a power-up as well. He gets to the final stage of Koei Sogetsu, and instead, it's all just gags, a waste of time, very, very disappointing. And one other thing that really sucks about this is that there was so much potential for this series. After going through it, it is very lighthearted. And another thing that really sucks about this is this series really could have gone the distance. There was so much potential here, and like I said, it was very light on the writing and character development, but if we would have expanded more into that, we could have really had something special here. We really could have had something here. There's an arc where Rintaro is thrusted to team up with Kyoka for a school festival, and that is sort of where she gets her affections towards him, but it's more of respect. But of course, at the very end of that arc, there is a little more coming into that, and that all got resolved in 2 chapters. Now, mind you, sure, it's a monthly series, but still 2 chapters and we're done. The training that they had to do for this dance routine that Kyoka came up with was in 1 chapter, and that really sucks, right? You could flesh it out more, and even with how that arc ends with Rintaro realizing something about himself. Because he has hentai syndrome, he's constantly avoiding any interaction at all, physically, even looking, and in this arc, he accidentally holds Kyoka's hand at the end as they perform their last step in this dance, dodging lightning, and yeah, he's holding her hand and he feels fine. Mind you, he did tell Kyoka what his condition is because of the situation they're in, and she understood, but then she says, well, look, you're holding my hand, no problem, right? And he realizes, oh, so maybe this is actually doable. And, it ended with a gag of just him saying, oh my God, father, I'm sorry, I can't believe I touched a woman, no, my life is over, I'm gonna die, kind of thing, but, he's fine. We never really get more into that. And that's also another problem, is how they deal with Rintaro's hentai syndrome. Right, because the premise is he learns Koei Sogetsu so he can counteract these situations that he winds up in that's in a typical ecchi harem manga, like To Love Ru. But I thought, as we go further into his life in high school, interacting with all of these women and also understanding more of himself, I thought we were going to end up with the series of him just overcoming it on his own by mastering Koei Sugetsu finally, which is what I thought we got around the chapter 30 or so whenever he got that ultimate technique. But instead, it got resolved in the gag form of it, which really sucked because it's kind of just like, oh, this is an important thing, and like, oh, we're just going to end it on a joke. Okay, like it was that easy for it to do. That's kind of unfortunate, I think. And as far as the other characters go, the main heroine of the series, Ayane, she's okay. Once we got into the arc with Kyoka, or at least we got more of her and learning about her, I was like, oh man, we're in that situation again where I thought the series was going to end with Rintaro and Ayane together. I say that sucks because Ayane is a boring heroine compared to the other supporting cast that come in for the harem, like Kyoka and Rino, for example. So I was like, oh, that's really going to suck. But the way it ends is, well, since we didn't super dive deep into the harem aspect, I guess, then we're just not going to have Rintaro end up with somebody. So I was like, oh, okay. Again, the art style is pretty good. When we get into the fights, it is a bit of a mess with all the like effects that are being thrown in there, all the katakana and like all the stylization of the punches with like, the wind lines and all of that kind of stuff. It can get a little crowded, but when we get some really nice shots, it's pretty good. And we also get over the top as we have to fight somebody who's basically Hulk, as the more lewdness is in his mind, the stronger he gets. So it goes into this arc with a character that was previously defeated, and she's just like shoving his face in her cleavage so he could get stronger kind of thing. And that stuff was pretty cool. And another aspect I liked early on was Rintaro himself learning this martial arts. He's been studying for 10 years, and this is a pretty strong martial arts. And it was like that. And in the beginning, for a majority of the time until things got more serious with other characters coming in outside of the school, he was probably the strongest one there. Sure, he had a tough time with the 3 main dragons, but it's not like he ever took real damage. And I kind of like that about the series, of where like our main character is already OP because he's trained for so long, but because he has this hurdle of making sure not to get any panty shots, any cleavage, he has to limit himself into how much damage he can output. So when he gets to this fight with him and Kyoka, after they had a lot of one-on-one moments together during that training for the dancing segment, he can actually go all out a little bit more than he has in the past, and we get to see how much more powerful he is, and that stuff was pretty cool. It's a different change of pace, and I think that's good for a series like this, because there's really no room for Rintaro to train more when he has to avoid all of these ladies, as well as we get more understanding of the school and the supporting cast. I would say for the first half, check it out definitely, because it's a fun time, good art, all that stuff I've said, but then when you hit the second half, it really sucks. And you could definitely tell where it is, because we start an arc that doesn't involve martial arts at all, and it really hits the brake on the pacing for the series, and that sucks. And that's where you could really tell that's where the downfall went, because judging on how many chapters Watanabe would have had to end it, and then you could just see it kind of just spirals down more into the gag and ecchi rather than decent story writing, characters, and the fights. At the end of the day, I am glad that I finished it though, so that way, we could close that book on my list. But yeah, just disappointed to see where that goes. But with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, guys. Thanks for sticking around for this episode. If you have any questions or comments, what did you think of Dragon's Rioting? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And you can send those to unversepodcast@gmail.com. And then you can follow us on social media at unversepodcast anywhere you go. And we'll let you know when those episodes drop. So thanks, guys. And we will catch you on the next one.